Warning: this series may contain discussions about the accountancy profession, jargon of a financial nature, and some really engaging content. Episode 1: Cornish Accounting Solutions' involvement with Xero and their journey with GI and transition to DRM. Welcome to that GI video podcast. In this episode, we hear from Paul Miller, Managing Director at Cornish Accounting Solutions, about how their businesses utilise technology and the involvement they have with Xero. Paul also discusses Cornish Accounting's journey with GI, as well as the transition they've made from pay-as-you-go to our DRM model.
Welcome one and all to that GI Outsourcing video podcast with me, GI James. Today I'm joined by Managing Director from Cornish Accounting Solutions, Mr. Paul Miller. Hey Paul, how are you getting on?
I'm really good, thank you.
Delighted to hear. Happy Thursday. Not too far off the weekend, right?
Sun's shining, glorious day, isn't it?
Well, absolutely. Loving the background as well. Just a fast comment firstly. Paul, I guess, going from your LinkedIn website, discussions that we've had, I know you were Xero's first gold partner practice in Cornwall, so using technology very much so ahead of the curve. Can you tell me a bit more about that?
So we first got involved with Xero back in 2011. And I guess if we're honest, we've made quite a few mistakes along the way. So originally we saw Xero as a replacement for Sage. And obviously, as we now know, it's much, much more than that. So when we started with Xero, there weren't many help guidelines or advice to what to do. So I'm one of these people that basically wants to fly the plane rather than read the manual. So basically with Xero, we learned as we went. We made quite a lot of mistakes early on. And I guess it was our understanding that actually helped us to turn it around and to use Xero as an indispensable tool in the practice.
Fantastic. I guess, on that thing of, working with partners and various partners in time, I know we can see a very nicely branded gilet you've got on there with the changed name for obviously Receipt Bank now. In particular with GI, so I know you've been working with us for quite some time, and I guess you've worked with us in both of our ways of working with clients, initially starting on our pay-as-you-go model, and obviously now moving through to the DRM model and having a designated member of staff working with you. I guess talk us through that journey, that you've had with GI, why you started in that way and why you've made that transition through to the DRM model.
I think as most accountants are, I'm very cautious. We want to dip our toe in the water first to make sure that something works. And therefore the pay-as-you-go model is one way of actually dipping your toe in the water to work out what's right for you, so that we're not betting the whole house on the outcome. We're just seeing whether it's right for us. And I think like most suppliers, most partnerships, it's building a relationship, it's building an understanding of how it actually works. So I think initially we wanted to understand how that would work for us. And what we found using GI as a partner of the business was that we were able to scale up the business to cope with the high volume of compliance work.
Okay.
We all know, as a lot of accountants do, a lot of your year ends will be the same months. Typically it'll be March and April, potentially December. So how do you gear up, staff up to actually cope with that volume of work? And one of the ways that we did it was to start with GI as a pay-as-you-go model, and then work to that we have a full-time equivalent, your DRM model, so that we were able to have little Johnny in India who actually did our work, who actually understood the way we work, and actually was able to be part of our team and understand, as a lot of accountancy practices, we have our own individual ways of working, our own parameters, our own tolerances, whatever words you want to choose. And it was basically just to explain that once and for all. What we loved about the GI model was that it is a partnership in the true sense of the word. We are in this together. We are looking to create mutual benefit for both parties. And to do that, you actually need to have dialogue. Initially, when we started to use GI, some of the team members would say, well, we did a bookkeeping job, they did the year-end accounts, but they actually changed things. So my question back was, have you actually told them that you don't want things changed? Because most people are probably like me. I'm not psychic. I can't read things. I can't interpret the way people are feeling by body language, etc. I need to actually have people tell me. And then basically, unless you tell them, unless you explain, unless you educate, You can't expect people to mind read. And so on the bookkeeping jobs, we actually say, this is the way that we want it done. We don't want you to disturb any of the analysis. We have done that ourselves. So what we'd like you to do is help us prepare a set of accounts. Whereas on some of the other jobs that we do that we don't do the bookkeeping, then yes, it's quite fine to actually change the analysis work, but there need to be certain parameters, need to be some form of communication, some form of explanation, education, so that both parties actually understand what's going on and what they need to do.
Absolutely. I guess that point around communication is so important, on both models, but particularly, if you had a member of staff working for you in the UK, you would expect, input to that individual, feedback, obviously, growing their appetite for work and I guess their processes and ways of working to attune them to your practice, right?
Correct. And I think we've been outsourcing for quite a number of years, and I think GI is our fourth partner that we've outsourced with. And what we found initially when we used outsourcing was provided a structure, provided us with a process, a way to actually do jobs. Because as I mentioned earlier, I'm one who wants to fly the plane. I don't want to read the manual. I'm not necessarily a systems type person. For me, it's seat of the pants, and that's how I've built the business. That's how I've got to the state that we are. But there actually needs to be some sort of definition, some sort of roadmap, some sort of logical way of actually doing things. Because like most practitioners, as the business grows, you have less involvement in some of the tasks because quite naturally you're running out of time. So you can't actually do everything. So how do you get people to understand the way that you work, think like you, do things the way that you do? And the way that you actually do that is by training, by communication, by education.
Absolutely. I guess for the investment that you've made with GI, Paul, is it comparable? How do you track how well that investment is performing with GI? And I guess what's your return on investment of working with us?
So we would expect probably that the fees that GI help us generate would be 3 times for the initial cost. And we would actually look at a sort of a fairly basic metric in that we don't necessarily monitor every job. Good thing about working with GI is that we do have a budget for every job. We do have a sign off. So I can actually say, you said that's going to take 37 hours. I think it should take 32. Can you please go away and relook at it, just as you would do with an employee in the UK? And it needs to be that constant dialogue, that constant feedback, constant communication to actually understand what's going on. And as I said earlier, it's a partnership, isn't it?
Indeed, very much so. I love the outlook that you've got there in that partnership, and I guess in particular as that partnership's built and developed, through from Cornish Accounting Solutions and GI. Can you tell me a little bit more around how actually you work with the member of staff that's working with you at the moment under that DRM model? Everything from process to culture, involvement, and anything more you wish to add?
So the way it all starts is we have to identify and allocate the jobs. Once we've done that, we would then upload various documents. And I think having been outsourcing for a number of years, in the early days, we used to have to take apart checkbooks and scan them in, which is obviously relatively time consuming.
Yes.
Since those days, the world has actually come on a long way and technology has actually helped that. So what you would need to do is give them access to the accounting program, in our case, majority of Xero. We have an electronic workbook that we pre-populate with certain things that the DRM would complete, where we embed PDFs of invoices, etc. And then we would then send the job out to GI, or send it electronically, not physically send, but send it electronically. Then it's then reviewed. Then they then come up with a budget. And then we then talk about how we do it, which we plan in. What I love about the DRM model, it's as though you have an employee in your office, which I guess in your virtual office, which I guess you do, but you actually decide, you actually allocate, prioritize the jobs. And with a good relationship with GI, which is what we've got, is that in the run up to December, we actually lost a couple of team members. So I said to my client manager at GI, I've got some other jobs that I'd like you to do. Could you potentially have space, have capacity to actually do those for me? And lo and behold, they did. So it was, not only do we have our one DRM or one full-time equivalent, GI were actually able to help us with the lack of resources that we had in the UK because of team members leaving to actually help us out and deliver the results to the client. And that feedback is pretty constant. That communication is pretty constant in that we would want regular dialogue, regular calls, regular Skype meetings.
Mm-hmm.
And then we would actually say, we've got this job to do, which is actually a priority. Can you actually do it? And we've got a meeting on Wednesday. And GI would do their utmost. And invariably, I think 99 times out of 100, we've achieved that deadline. And there isn't many partners that you can actually say that of.
Thinking of outsourcing? Want to know more? Get in contact with us via our website or email us directly at solutions@gioutsourcing.com. More episodes coming soon, so stay tuned.